English translation, 506th contact, Sunday 21st November 2010, 13:54 hours.
Since it is already 14 hours again and we have already finished an hour of Talmudic work, I would like to ask you something else if you do not have to go yet.
I still have 20 to 30 minutes left.
When we have our private conversations, I always notice that when we talk about sex, you also include religions. So far, I've never asked you why you do that. I understand that all religions also have powerful sectarian traits, but I think that you have to make a difference when you explain certain things to make it clear what you are talking about.
Your explanation is also mine, because in order to make what is being talked about understandable, the concepts of religion and sect must be separated, although religions are also nothing more than highly bred sects that interfere in the private affairs and lives of believers. The following can be said in a few words. Earth humans unfortunately do not understand the whole of the sectarianism of religions, for they usually do not consider them to be sects, but a representation of his glory authorized by a god through special revelations. This in contrast to the sects, which are considered to be communities split off from a main religion, which seek the true path to salvation on the basis of other alleged sources of revelation, or as a result of an overestimation of individual aspects of faith. Religions, however, are based on the same principles and also act in the same way, so there is no difference between them and sects in general. If I can speak in your words, then religions and sects are uniformly consciousness-dulling factors of those masses of religious and sectarian mankind who have fallen prey to such beliefs. Particularly through religion-related sectarianism, but also through the general special revelation sectarianism, which also has a connection to religions, earthly humanity is also lastingly influenced politically, culturally, and consciously. As a result, the majority of humanity today, which lives out predominantly religious sectarian delusions, cannot free itself from them rationally and intellectually in order to independently recognize all factors of life, to think about them, to decide and determine them. Religions and their general sects are no more than quasi-truth disseminators, which in any case intervene in a fundamentalist, extreme and coercive manner in the private sphere and thus also in family life as well as in the intimate life of believers, making them dependent on religious sectarian nonsense, thus also restricting the personal freedom of human beings in every respect. And this is not infrequently the case through the religious sectarian-influenced machinations of politics.
Well said, dear friend. That is what I would actually say in my own words. But may I ask you, would you like to make a drawing of Judas Ischkerioth today? You said that you have a drawn portrait of him that you would like to take a closer look at.
I have done that, so I will try to reproduce it to some extent. But it will not be a framework because I have to reproduce it from memory.
It will probably be a small work of art anyway. The important thing is that it really represents Judas Ischkarioth.
It certainly will. Give me a pen and paper and I will try to make something useful.
Not a problem. A pencil here and a piece of paper from the printer here.
Thanks.
Pod draws and it only takes a few minutes.
So this is it.
Original drawing by Ptah. Developed, Barbara Harnish. Developed, Christian Krakowski.
Thanks, that is more than I expected. Is it allowed that I insert your drawing into the Talmud Emmanuel?
If you want, you can do it. It is not objectionable, quite to the contrary, it might give a certain impression of what the man looked like at that time. Surely many human beings are interested in this who want to see the real author of the scroll at least as a graphic representation, which will give them certain ideas. Our graphic portrait is in color, but my modest artwork is not enough to make it also in color.
All right, dear friend, it is also enough. Thanks again. Then I would like to ask you something about the Inquisition. You have given me some information about it, namely that about 9 million human beings were officially murdered by it. But certain book writers and chroniclers, etc., claim that it was only about 240,000. You also said that the number of unreported cases of all those murdered by the Inquisition was another 9 million.
Our statements correspond to the correctness, whereas the Earth humans' claims are wrong. What the Inquisition does not take into account is the fact that it began centuries before the known Inquisition period and is also maintained after this time. However, the methods of the Inquisition have changed and are no longer openly murdered and persecuted, but only secretly. It must be considered that the Crusaders were also inquisitors, as were the hordes of Christopher Columbus, etc., even though they did not call themselves inquisitors. They all murdered. If not necessarily for the sake of witchcraft, then at least for the sake of the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith, and also for the sake of great values, which were robbed and given to the Vatican. But this must not distract from the fact that the individual groups which murdered and robbed, and did so in the name of the Catholic faith, accumulated enormous treasures and thus enriched themselves from their victims. In these organized machinations, which were also carried out in a warlike manner in the name of the Catholic Church, it has been recorded, according to our records, that around 9.8 million human beings were murdered in the last 2,000 years as a result of delusional belief. The number of unreported cases, which we of course only assume, is the same again. And as I have already said, the Inquisition organization of the Catholic Church came into being several centuries before the official Inquisition. That is to say, long before 1231, when the Vatican instructed the dogs of the Lord, respectively, the Dominican monks as malicious inquisitors, to carry out the witch hunt, which often only served to enrich the inquisitors as well as the Vatican, the rulers and priests, etc. And this murderous Inquisition organization still exists today, although only its methods have changed, and the name of the criminal organization has been changed and has been called Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith for about 45 years. And when we are talking about 9.8 million human beings and an equal number in terms of a dark figure, I am not simply giving details of those who were officially murdered by the Roman Inquisition proclaimed in 1231. Our figures refer to the entire period of the last 2,000 years, during which the Christian faith was murdered in many ways. So the whole period of Christianity's existence, since its inception, must be understood as the time of the Inquisition, whereby the murderous machinations of the Catholic Church associated with it are decisive. All in all, that is what we assume when we speak of 9.8 million human beings murdered by the Inquisition.
That is what is meant, and I understand everything better now. But something about the Talmud Emmanuel. What I think is amazing is that Isa Rashid has also given the wrong name to the Talmud writer. He simply used the name Judas Ischarioth from the New Testament, instead of the correct name, Judas Ischarioth.
He was so captivated by his Christian faith that it would have seemed a crime to him to use the real name of the scribe of the scroll, as was also the case with all the other things he either omitted or replaced with extracts from the New Testament.
I can understand that, but it is simply tremendous what a sectarian religious belief can do in all that is evil and wrong. But let's not go there. What is it about the so-called Schüssler salts? Are they really as useful as they are propagated?
They are to be evaluated in the same way as homeopathy. Both are infinitely diluted, and through this processing they no longer contain any active ingredients. Effects only occur as a result of the belief that an effect is created, which is also called a signal effect, but which is fundamentally based on the fact that the human being who takes such useless preparations unconsciously suggestively influences his mental block to create a mental vibration, which stimulates energies and forces that may trigger and realize a self-healing process.
Understood. Then I have no more questions, and we can turn to the work of the Talmud.